Throughout the entire animal kingdom, there are more physical traits than anyone can count. They may be extravagant or reserved, colorful or dull, or even maybe a mix of them all. You may be thinking, what traits are the best then? Well, no matter what your trait is, the decision is ultimately lady's choice. You may be wondering, well, that's a bit sexist, but it makes sense. Within the animal kingdom, the female invests much more energy into reproduction. For example, elephant gestation can average up to 2 years, and you wonder why it's female preference. Now that we've covered that, let's dive down and talk about the 4 different ways women choose their mates.
Let her know, I gotta let her know that she my white horse, she my medical. She like my baby mama, know how to take care of me.
The first hypothesis goes against what we are taught to not judge a book by its cover, as the advertisement of good genes is a driving factor for selection. Females choose males that display honest traits that show good genetic quality to in turn increase the fitness of their offspring. Males can show these good genes by displaying through ornamentation and signaling. For example, in grey tree frogs need to be heard in a crowd, so males use a longer call sound so that females can find them and mate with them. But choosing a mate isn't all about looks. When looking at the good provider hypothesis, sometimes size matters. In nature, gift size is related to female preference. A good example of this is the hanging flies and using natural food packages. Benefits of this is that females can reduce the amount of time needed to search for food as they look for males that show good resources, make it be parenting habits, habitat, or food, that less energy can be wasted on finding food and more energy can be put into producing eggs and therefore increase fecundity.
The sensory exploitation theory explains that there is a pre-existing bias in traits that weren't originally of a sexual origin. That is, a female would perform an action or develop a sensory system for a purpose, and the men would abuse this system to copulate. A brilliant example of this is the water mite. In hunting for prey, they assume a net stance and allows them to perceive vibrations and orient themselves accordingly. Men will vibrate their legs, resulting in the woman positioning herself towards the man, allowing him to impregnate her. The sexy son hypothesis, however, is where a female chooses a mate based solely on a physical display that in no way comments on genetic fitness or survivability. This allows the continuity of the species, as the daughters will also prefer this trait while the sons display it. A perfect example of this is the peacock, where the male employs a dazzling array of tail feathers, where the more extravagant, the better. This is done because it increases the chance of that trait defining the species, ensuring the survival of the offspring.
The animal kingdom is a bizarre and wondrous collection of techniques that have stood the test of time. Whether it's him displaying cues of competence or her having standards, the development of the female preference for genetically linked male traits has been a common theme in the evolutionary timeline. It has led to the sexual isolation of individuals, species, and greater biodiversity as a population.